Well, hello and good afternoon. My name is Kevin Barker. I am with Intervision Systems, and I'm here today to talk to you about the AWS AppStream Remote Access Tool. I work a lot with AWS customers and potential AWS customers, and this is one of the most exciting products that I've had an opportunity to bring forward from AWS, and I hope that when we're done, you're going to want to pursue this. So with that, I'm going to dive right in to talk about what is AppStream. So it is a cloud-based application streaming service. So it is very different than VDI. What it does is we install individual applications on a Windows server, and then we dish those applications up via an HTML5 browser. So very, very simple to deliver and very simple to stand up. The key elements to this, number one, and I think this is incredibly important, you don't need a VPN, right? So if we think about traditional VDI access, we build out VMware servers, we install desktops on them, and we deliver that via a VPN connection back to our on-prem environment. Well, we skip all that by hosting this in AWS and eliminating the VPN and simply delivering an application-based user interface without the heaviness of the desktop. So it's, as I said, it's simple to configure and it's very simple to use from the user interface perspective. And it's also a pay-as-you-go pricing model. So it takes advantage of key AWS features such as auto scaling to allow us to deliver the applications on a moment's notice to the individuals that need it and only pay when they're actually being utilized. So the key pieces of AppStream, there's just a few, and we're going to walk through them here, and then we'll jump into the product, and I'll show you how you would actually configure your own AppStream setup and what it looks like from the perspective of using the tool. So we start with what's called the image builder, and this is our image creation tool. And as I mentioned, we use Windows Server to be specific. So Amazon delivers a whole set of base images, starting with Windows 2012, 16, 19, and there are different images that are optimized depending on what type of application delivery you're trying to enable. So we take that base image and then we layer on the applications that we wish to deliver. We put the applications in, we configure them, we test them, and then we take advantage of AWS tool sets to optimize those for delivery through our HTML5 browser. And then we create what we call a golden image. And then that image, those are the applications that are going to get streamed out to the individuals that are going to consume them. And we take that golden image and we put it into what's called a fleet, which is just the term for the instances or images that we're going to stream out. And then the fleet contains the wrappers that control how many of these instances are we going to allow to be run at any point in time. How do we want to scale these up or scale these down based on demand? We can also choose whether we want to have these as always on or on demand. So always on is going to give you cost savings and is pretty much a standard way to deliver this. But if you've got some key executives, perhaps that would be using some tools for financial analysis or modeling, well, they're executives. So we're going to make sure that we deliver those on an always on basis so that they're not going to wait that 1 minute or so when they log into AppStream as the application spins up. Then once we've got our fleet designed there, we put the fleet into what's called a stack. And again, this is just really a way to wrap a couple of other key configuration elements around it. So the stack is used to define our storage configurations and also to customize or brand this to our company's own identity. So storage can include S3 storage, or if you've already got Google Drive or OneDrive set up, we can take advantage of your OneDrive or Google domain and use that as back-end storage. I'm not going to get heavily into the configuration, but it's also very easy to integrate your own existing on-premise applications or storage or identity servers or single sign-on or two-factor authentication servers. And we will look at an architecture slide. But we can tie this into as much of your existing environment as you need. So once we've got our stack defined, we now have our instances and we're ready to go ahead and create and stream these out to the individuals that are going to use it. And we have a couple of different ways to handle authentication, which I'll talk about in my next slide. So this is a quick high-level architectural diagram of how AppStream is configured and hosted in AWS. So it looks a little busy, but we'll walk through it, and it's pretty straightforward. On the left, we have our AppStream AWS account, and there we have, in this case, 2 different availability zones for HA purposes. And in each of those AZs, we're hosting our AppStream fleet instances. And we've configured this for VPC. We've got a NAT gateway in place so that we can get out to the internet because we want to allow our end users to go ahead and access back-end information, but also go out via, perhaps a Chrome browser to check news or whatever. And then over on the right side, we have our central services or shared services AWS account. And this is where we would put in place things like Active Directory if we were going to go ahead and use AD to do authentication. And then in the center of the diagram, we show our on-premise application servers, our identity management servers, and all of this gets connected via AWS Transit Gateways. And the other missing piece of this is down at the bottom, which is how do we actually connect in and authenticate? So there's a couple different ways. On the left, we have a very simple way of connecting using what are called user pools. And this is where we simply define individuals within our AppStream environment, and they log in via an email address and password. Great for proof of concept, very easy to get up and running, and again, a common way just to try this out. For complex environments or production environments, we're typically going to want to integrate this with our own existing identity providers, and that's shown over here on the right. So the remote user comes in, they hit the internet, they hit their own company's identity provider. That's synchronized via the AD directory service to the AWS AppStream environment, and then they're passed over to the AppStream itself to go ahead and log in and use the applications. So any questions on this high-level architecture, or do you want me just to go ahead and drop in and give you a quick nickel tour of the user interface? Okay, yes?
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's jump into a tour.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do that. So we're going to start with the AppStream user application access, and then we'll take a quick look at the administration console. So let me just bring up, I went ahead and logged in to my AppStream site, and the reason for that is because my site is an on-demand site. So when you log in, you enter in your credentials, you're then presented with the user portal showing the applications that you're entitled to get to, and you see that here. You can also see that I branded this for my own company's, with my own company's logo, and you can put hot links in to take people other places as they desire. I then would have selected the application, and that first time after I logged in, there'd be about a 1.5 minute delay while that AppStream EC2 instance is launched. So I didn't want you to have to stare at a screen for a 1.5 minutes, and I went ahead and brought this up. But as I mentioned, you create this catalog of applications that the individuals are going to be accessing or using. And I went ahead and already launched Photoshop. And this is a good example. Photoshop is a image editing tool, and it's a pretty heavy duty application, and obviously we're bringing up large scale images, and so responsiveness matters. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up. I've already got 3 large images opened. I'm going to open up another image, and this is about an 8 meg file, and you can see it's almost instantaneous. And by the way, I'm not using AWS S3 buckets here. So I'm actually storing this on an external OneDrive. So the process, Photoshop called for this image. The image was retrieved across the internet from Microsoft's OneDrive storage and brought here into my Photoshop tool for editing purposes. So really doesn't matter what type of application you want to host. You can host, as I'm doing here, Photoshop, 3D, AutoCAD, things like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you loading an application. So I just loaded Wireshark from scratch. It was almost instantaneous. And now I'm going to open about a 25 or 30 meg PCAP. And again, we'll see how this loads here. And I love doing this real time because you never know. We get to experience exactly what happens in the real world. And as you can see, it's incredibly quick. A few other things I want to point out about the user interface. First, it is multi-screen, so we can use dual screens with this. As I mentioned, it's delivered by an HTML5 browser. So any modern browser is going to allow you to host the AppStream applications. I will note, if you have applications that require some type of external USB device, maybe a drawing tablet, you can actually also use a Windows application version of AppStream that will support external USB devices. So if you need that, we've got that covered also. We also allow, and you get to control this, transfer of data to and from the local device as you determine. So security is obviously extremely important. If you're running very mission critical applications that you don't want to have data moved from, you don't allow transfers in or out of the AppStream environment. So questions on the user interface before I move on? Okay, then let's talk a little bit about the AppStream interface from the perspective of the administrator. So I mentioned that we have this concept of images, fleets, and stacks, and that really controls how we build out our AppStream environment. And we start with images, and these are where we load on the applications that we want to deliver. And as I mentioned, Amazon has a whole set of pre-built images, including a demonstration image, a sample image that you're seeing right here, that you use to build out your own individual specific image for your environment. So to do that, we actually use this thing called the image builder. And the very first time we build an image, we launch the image builder, we select our base image, and that's where we say we want, Windows 2016 graphics desktop, because that's optimized to support delivering things like Adobe Photoshop. Once we launch that, we're dropped into a Windows desktop that is, and to all intents and purposes, looks pretty much like an ordinary Windows desktop, but it does have some very special components that Amazon has inserted into it. And it's a 3-step process. We install our applications, and we do that just as we would normally install any other application onto a Windows server. Once the application is installed, we add it into the image assistant here, and I've gone ahead and added these applications already because we were just looking at them from the perspective of the end user. And then once we've installed them, we configure those applications. So we bring up the apps, we set any specific settings that are appropriate for the environment that they are running in. We test them to validate that they are functioning properly. And then if need be, we repeat that, right? We go back and tweak them. And then once they've been tested and we're satisfied, we then go through this optimization process, which is some Amazon secret sauce, where we launch these apps. The image assistant analyzes the various runtime components and goes through and tweaks them so that they'll be as fast and as quick to load and function as possible. And then finally, I'm going to skip this step because I've already done it, but we then give the image a name and we create the golden image that we will then use. So hopefully that makes sense. Any questions on building out an application image? Okay, I'm going to move on. So once we have built out our application image, the next step is to tie that golden image to a fleet. And as I mentioned, a fleet is a wrapper where we put the image or instance that we've created, and we then add a bunch of additional information, configuration information that helps define how this will run. So we'll take a look at that fleet that we were just logged into. And as we can see, we have defined here how long our session is allowed to execute before it's automatically shut down. We've defined once I have disconnected from that session, how long does it maintain in a persistent state in case I want to turn around and log back in. And then how long before that session expires if I walk away from my computer desktop. So we go ahead and define our fleet, and once we have defined our fleet, we then add that fleet to a stack. And the stack is where, again, we just put a couple other wrappers around it that control how the individuals will interact with it. So here's our stack. We've associated this particular fleet with it. And here's where we define the storage. So we've tied an S3 bucket to it so that we can have persistent user configuration information kept across sessions. And in this case, I've tied our corporate OneDrive domain to it because I want to go ahead and use that storage instead of using S3 for my images and my Excel spreadsheets because I've already paid for that. I don't need to pay Amazon again. And then I can enable various settings that control things like data transfer, and I already mentioned application setting persistence, which is a smart thing that you almost always want to enable. And finally, I want to go ahead and brand it, right? So I'm giving it my organization's logo. I put a link to our corporate website, and maybe I could put a help page in there if I want, and just make it look like it's my company's data that I'm delivering up. So those are the three pieces: the stack, the fleet, the image. The user pool is if I want to define local users, and then the directory configuration component is where I can tie in our own organization's internal directory. So very simple. Frankly, this is, I think, a fantastic way to introduce your company to Amazon if you're new to it, because it's going to deliver an incredible service and it's very easy to stand up and very easy to learn. So that's Amazon AppStream in a nutshell. And what I want to talk to you next is about how we can assist you in getting this up and running in your organization. So I'm going to flip back over to my slideshow. And everybody see my slide, I hope? So Intervision has, oh, cool, that's what I was hoping for. So we have developed a special program. It's a jumpstart program that allows companies like yours or organizations like yours to get up and running with AppStream at no cost. So we put this program together based on our experience of delivering AppStream to customers. And what we do is we allocate 50 hours towards building out an AppStream environment for you at no charge to your organization. And this is a high-level allocation summary as we've seen it work with most of the customers that we've interacted with. So we devote about 6 hours to project management because that's critical. And then we devote about 30 hours to standing up a AWS AppStream environment. Our assumption is many customers that look at this for the first time probably don't have much going on with AWS. So we're going to stand up a new environment, get all of the infrastructure components such as integration with your Active Directory, tying in your firewall and getting a VPN connection back to your organization's on-premise environment. And that's all what we do within that 30 hours. And then we devote about 14 hours to standing up to 3 applications. And we have found that we can do this pretty successfully with 3 web-based applications. If you have a need for thick client applications, that's going to be somewhat dependent on the application. Obviously, I just showed you Adobe Photoshop, so we certainly have a lot of experience in delivering that. Other applications, maybe you're using some form of an internal human resources or accounting system. If we're not familiar with it, it may take a little more time and we would exceed the 50 hours. But this is our promised deliverable to you, which is to get you up and running on AppStream, and the first 50 hours are on Intervision when we do that. So real quick, I'm not going to walk through this in any great detail, but these are the implementation tasks and how we would work with you to deliver this solution. You know, we would meet with you, we would build out the AWS accounts, we would integrate the networking piece so we can talk back to your on-premise identity servers or on-premise applications if we're going to be integrating those. We test, we deploy, and then we turn it over to you. So that's the basic flow. And on the phone with me also is Corey Casto, and Corey is one of our Intervision account managers that works and helps customers with this AppStream migration process. And I'm going to turn this over to him. He has a couple words to say, and he would be the individual you would reach out to if you had questions or wanted to engage us on next steps. So, Corey?
Thanks, Kevin. Great overview. Just a couple of things to add. As we move through the process, you know, if there is an interest, a couple of things that we get done early on in the process is a questionnaire and a pricing tool. That questionnaire helps us kind of understand you know, what kind of firewall you're using, what sort of routing protocol, do you have URL filtering, kind of a host of questions about your current environment to help us, you know, better understand how to make an AppStream deployment or POC successful. And then the pricing tool gives us an idea of the number of users, both overall and kind of concurrent, and what you see as usage during different parts of the day, what region you'd want to be in, the licensing model that you have on some of your applications or tools that you're already using. And those things are going to help us get a better idea of how to best make this a successful POC. And then, you know, if there's interest in moving on forward with something like this, you can either get in contact with myself or with your AWS account team, and they can put you in contact with us. So, and Kevin, one more thing, just you know, something that I thought that would be useful is maybe a little bit of an explanation about how this can especially be impactful to K-12 with the current situation going on.
Absolutely, and that's a great point to bring forward, Corey. So we've actually been working very, very extensively with school districts in both the K-12 and the higher education space. COVID-19 was an extraordinary event that has caused so many organizations to have to rethink how they deliver and service the people that they care about. And so we've seen distance learning exploding. We've seen the need to have remote labs. And I think even when we start to move into this new normal and people may end up starting to go back to school, there's still going to be a need to deliver applications across the web efficiently and effectively and at a low cost. And so we've got some fantastic success stories in both the K-12 and the higher education sector, and we'd be glad to sit down and talk to you. In one instance, we had a community college in Southern California where they literally had to spin this up in 48 hours, and we were able to successfully make that happen for them. So if that's the space you're in, love to have that conversation with you.
Thanks, Kevin. That's great insight on kind of what we've been doing and the things that we're doing to help in the K-12 and higher ed space. So I think that's kind of all we have. So I think it's a good time to wrap this up and say thank you to everybody for joining. And again, if you have any sorts of questions or interest in looking at, or even just having a, some sort of discovery about what you're doing and how AppStream may be able to help, feel free to reach out to myself or your AWS team.